Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the regular council meeting for Monday, October 1st, 2018. There is a scheduled recess at 9 p.m. Clerk tonight is Ms. Sheila Gurry. Ms. Gurry, any late items?
Thank you, Your Worship. On the addendum this evening, we are for agenda item 8B, Procedure Bylaw. We're adding the report and bylaw titled Council Procedure Bylaw 2018 number 7272. Agenda item 8C, Bylaw 7000 revisions. We're adding report titled Bylaw 7000 revisions. Agenda item 10B, One Port Drive, C-SPAN right-of-way, final disposition. We're changing the wording of the recommendation as follows for item B, so 10BB. We'll now read, approve the disposition of 3.6 acres of water lot and 5.7 acres of upland with an estimated market value of $50,500 from One Port Drive to C-SPAN Ferries Corporation. We're removing agenda item 10C, development variance permit application number DVP 363 for One Port Drive. Agenda item 10D, development permit application number DP 1089 at 285 Rose Hill Street. We're removing the delegation from Devon Cronshaw from Macola Development Services. We're adding agenda item 10I, covenant amendment at 6201 Oliver Road. Agenda item 10E, we're replacing page 93, terms and conditions of development permit application number DP 1100 at 65 Pride Avenue. We're removing agenda item 11A, Parks Bylaw Amendment, and agenda item 12.1, zoning amendment bylaw 2018 number 4500.127. We're adding zoning amendment bylaw 2018 number 45.127.
Thank
and
you.
that's it, Your Worship.
Councillor Brannan.
Are we introducing late items at this
Yes.
point? Yes. Okay. I'd like to add delegation of Sophie Denux and Robin Kelly to item 10E, which is the Pride Avenue property.
Okay, is there a seconder? Thank you. Any discussion? Seeing none, call the question on the amendment. Thank you. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Can you spell the names, please?
Yes. Sophie, S-O-P-H-I-E.
Yes.
I would say Denux, but D-E-N-U-X. And Robin Kelly, R-O-B-I-N, K-E-L-L-E-Y, Kelly.
That again was on agenda
10E.
10E. Thank you. Anyone else, Council? I have an additional item, and that's with respect to a payment under Council's spending and amenities policy. To a payment under Council's spending and amenities policy. It's a request for payment for travel expenses under Council's spending and amenities policy. Yeah. Ms. Curry.
Would that be under other business, Your Worship?
That certainly can.
Okay.
Thank you. Is there a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Brennan. Any discussion? Seeing none, call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Can we have a motion now to adopt the agenda as amended?
So moved.
Moved by Councillor Kipp, seconded by Councillor Hong. Thank you. Any further discussion? Seeing none, call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Can we have a motion for the adoption of the minutes of September 6th, September at 5:30, September 6th at 7, and September 17th at 7? All three?
All three.
Thank you. Any errors or omissions? Seeing none, call the question. All those in favor? Oh, Ms. Gurry?
Oh, was it second?
Yes, it was.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry. Call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Now, I wonder if we can just hold off on the mayor's report. I'm still waiting for documentation from the clerk with respect to the content of the mayor's report. So, next one would be administration under advisory committee minutes. Someone prepared to move all three of them? Thank you. Moved and seconded by Councillor Brennan. Thank you. Any discussion, errors or omissions? Seeing none, call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. We'll just move to the next item, and that is Council Procedure Bylaw, 2018, number 7272. And Council can see your addendum sheets. It's contained on page 3 to 30. Thank you. Councillor Bestwick, are you prepared to move a motion?
And they will be done one at a time, I'm assuming? First reading first?
That's correct.
I so move that Council Procedure Bylaw 2018-7272 to establish the rules of procedure for Council, Committee of the Whole, and Committee meetings pass first reading.
Thank you. Thank you. So it's been moved and seconded to get it on the floor, and we'll have debate during second. Call a question. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries.
I so move that Council Procedure Bylaw 2018-7272 pass second reading.
Thank you. Seconded by Councillor Hong. Thank you. Discussion. Councillor Bestwick.
Thank you very much. Just on page 4, items 6 and 7, but certainly item 6 clearly defines and delineates, in my humble opinion, why it's necessary for this bylaw to move forward onto the next council. Addressing the issue of late items and addendums. Currently, we print agendas the preceding week on Tuesdays, so on and so forth. And you can see the mass of the addendum, given the time frame in which staff have the opportunity to put the agenda together, which forms part of the reason, in my humble opinion, why we may be here very late on Monday nights, 9, 10, 11 o'clock or later. I'd like to hope that that can be cleaned up. And number 7, the Committee of the Whole meetings have turned into a full-fledged meeting of council, which has always been the Finance Policy Committee of the Whole meetings, whereby they're somewhat less formal, an opportunity to sit around a table with obvious rules of order in terms of rolling up your sleeves and debating and discussing without all of the formalities that we seem to have, plus all of the items that we seem to have added to the Committee of the Whole meetings on alternating Mondays. So I certainly look forward to the next council having the opportunity to walk in with a cleaner ability to operate their meetings. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other discussion? Councillor Fuller.
Yeah, I would be happy to send this somewhere else. I was just trying to find the exact part of the agenda where it talks about limiting delegations to 5 minutes. We've just spent how much on a community engagement task force? And now we're going to limit the amount of time that the community is allowed to engage with us during delegations. I just find that totally ironic. Mind you, I find a lot of what's gone on ironic, but I will not be supporting the bylaw, period, and that's a big part of it. The amount of time that council is going to get to read, like Councillor Bestwick said, a huge addendum like this, plus you have the RDM agenda for Tuesdays to read as well. Just does not give enough time, and that should actually be moved to Mondays, getting the agenda out, as opposed to the Tuesdays that it is right now, let alone trying to move it back to Thursdays. And those are just 2 of the reasons. I mentioned a bunch last week. I'm not going to go through it all again. I just will not be supporting it because I believe it is counter to what we've been talking about.
Thank you. Ms. Gray.
I'm okay, Your Worship. Thank you.
Thank you. So seeing no further speakers, I'm going to call a question. All those in favor? Opposed? Show Councillor Fuller and Councillor Kipp opposed. Motion carries. Is someone prepared to move 3rd reading? Moved by Councillor Bestwick and seconded by Councillor Armstrong. Any further discussion? Seeing none, call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Show Councillor Fuller. Councillor Kipp opposed. Motion carries. Next item. Bylaw 7,000 revisions to be introduced by Mr. John Van Horn, Director of Human Resources.
Thank you, Mayor McKay. First of all, to Councillor Bestwick's point, I would like to apologize for the delay in getting this, and that fact it was on an addendum. This report was actually worked on until Friday morning, with the addendum going out Friday afternoon. It was quite a tight turnaround to get it out there, but it's unfortunately necessary sometimes to make sure we don't have procedural or factual errors in the reports. And for the benefit of anyone who has gone through it, I will declare up front that I'm actually one of the people affected by the proposed changes. So just before anyone thinks they've got this aha moment, I do want to put that out to people. I actually made that point known at the outset, and was one of the reasons why staff were very interested in getting a consultant in order to move this process along. Part of my role is to give advice to council where needed on matters affecting employees of the city, including when I'm one of them. It's relatively easy for our unionized employees because they have elected representatives that we can speak to for purposes of communicating with all of their members, so it's quite expeditious that way. For exempt employees, there isn't this representation. There are in effect about what I would call 65 different free agents who each sign individual employment contracts with the city that the bylaw forms part of those contracts. So I'm here to provide, in spite of the fact that I'm one of the people affected by the bylaw, my role here is to provide the best professional advice I can to council on this. Recognizing that council is free to not follow that advice if they wish, but the interest is in putting the information in front of them. The amendments to the bylaw tonight that are being considered are in attachment C to the report, and I'll just summarize them in general terms here. There's a number of housekeeping changes that are title changes, cleaning up terminology. We've rephrased some of the terms in order to make them less ambiguous and less open to more than one interpretation. We've removed the reference to the HAY system, which is a job evaluation system that the city has used since, I saw in one item, since 1981. The HAY method's been in place, and it's actually was developed in the 50s as a job evaluation system, and I don't know is the best method of doing so for the city going forward. There's been some changes around the termination without cause. Because of a change in employment law, we've made sure to note that any earnings earned through mitigation are to be deducted from any obligation the city might have to the individual. And we've removed the 6-month notice period and the formula for calculating the pay in lieu, and we're just going to defer to the common law, which does change over time, but to make sure that we're always keeping up with changes in the common law. We've created a notice period for resignation, which hasn't been a problem in the past, getting people to give adequate notice in departure, but this just properly codifies it. The banking of vacation has been reduced to 5 days in total. Previously, staff could bank time after having used a certain amount of their annual vacation. They were allowed to carry it forward for use in later years. And the sick leave gratuity has been eliminated, and that was an item that provided for up to 60 days if a person had some time in their sick leave accumulation and 5 years of continuous service, they could have up to 60 days of sick time paid out on one time. The affected staff, because as I said earlier, there's a number of staff who are impacted by the changes to the bylaw. They have been notified, at least unofficially. Didn't feel it was appropriate that they find out about these plan changes by watching the video at home tonight. However, the city would be required to issue notice in the form of a letter to each individual who's affected, advising of the change and identifying the effective date of the change for those individuals. So the bylaw in front of council tonight has been directed by council to come forward for 3 readings. As for the report itself, the bylaw, there were so many changes that we've made going through the process, which I'll outline, that we've actually decided to repeal bylaw 7,000 and implement bylaw 7273 if this goes forward tonight. The Core Service Review had provided just a cursory look on the span of control exercised by managers and the base salary data for a handful of comparator local governments, but didn't delve into total compensation, which you see in the report defining as salary, benefit, time off, and other terms and conditions of employment. But the In April 2018, council took part in a half-day walkthrough with me and with the city's employment lawyer to do a sort of line-by-line review of the bylaw and look at some options for language. Each member of council was provided the opportunity to submit proposed suggested rewording of the clauses, and from there we sort of pulled all those together and said, okay, well, which of these do you want to go with? Staff have further recommended, though, that the city engage the services of a compensation consultant to review the total compensation package prior to finalizing revisions to the bylaw to ensure that the city remains competitive in the market for employees. And a third-party consultant, again, would help staff keep it a little more arm's length, but would also likely provide additional options for council to consider for revisions to the bylaw. So staff have also advised council the potential outcomes of revising the bylaw, notably the impacts on recruitment and retention of affected employees, in that the bylaw itself removes terms and conditions that are currently apply for our QP and IAFF affiliated staff, many of whom seek promotion into management positions, and many of our existing exempt staff are previously QP or IAFF members. And the concern from staff is that it'll create a barrier for career development through promotion and succession planning. So,
Thank you very much. Questions? Councillor Bestwick.
I don't have any questions, but I was prepared to make a motion.
That'd be fine too.
I would so move that council direct staff to proceed with the bylaw 7,000 revisions.
Thank you. It's been moved and seconded. Councillor Armstrong.
Thank you. I'll be opposing the motion. I believe that this should be set over to engage a consultant to provide better direction, and then let the incoming council, who will have to deal with the ramifications, deal with it. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Brennan.
Thank you, Your Worship. I too am opposed to this bylaw revision. I noticed that the city manager's comment is that there is a comprehensive compensation review for the non-bargaining unit, and it's scheduled for 2019. He recommends that council receive the report and accompanying background information and refer it to the compensation review process in 2019. He also notes that the compensation schedules, benefits portfolio, and related human resources policies collectively form the basis to retrain and attract non-bargaining unit employees. The city needs to maintain a competitive and attractive compensation system while being fiscally prudent. I think that if we move ahead on these revisions without referring it to the compensation review for non-bargaining staff, we are missing an opportunity to have a look at this and make sure that we are setting the conditions to be able to attract new hires, competent hires. I think that one of the things that many organizations like to strive for is to become the employer of choice. And for many years, Nanaimo was the employer of choice, and we attracted a very competent and able, and some would even say gifted, senior team. And I think that this detracts from our ability to continue to do that, and I will not support it. In addition, I think it's somewhat unfair, and I think when we treat our employees in a way that is unfair, they begin to look for either other jobs, or they begin to look for other ways to influence the employer. I know that there are other organizations, political organizations like this one, where the excluded staff have formed committees, and they present to their employer what they think should be changed in their employment bylaw. And I personally think that that's a good idea, because there's an opportunity to look face to face at people across the table and talk about how you would like to see your employment conditions change. So for all those reasons, I just can't support this.
Thank you. Councillor Kipp.
Well, thank you very much. I can support it. We've been dealing with this issue for, I believe, it started 2 or 3 terms ago, where we started looking at core services review, competencies within the Deloitte review. The Hay system in itself was so dated. So when I refer to the core service review and I look at the wage growth over a 10-year period, the increase was, mayor and council was 34% over 10 years. Management wages were 31%. CUPE was 52%. IAFF was 73%, for an average of 51% increase. Over 5 years, that average has gone up 24% with the core service review. So we've had quite a hiring program, like we've said. We've had quite a few people come in and leave the corporation, as the statistics showed. People come and go in the corporation all the time. They look for better things and better life. And so from my perspective, we're looking at the terminations. We're looking at resignations. We're looking at bank days. We're looking at sick leave, a gratuity that could have been paid out and currently is paid out. If you're in for 20 years and you don't take any sick time, you bank sick time at $10 an hour, and now you're making $30 an hour when you pay out as a gratuity for having a lifelong commitment from the city of Nanaimo. I believe those things need to be changed. I was elected a long time ago to help work on these things, and to delay it one more time, and to say that we're not an employer of choice. Everybody looks to get it. I mean, when we have applications for jobs for the acting CEO, I think we had, 30 applications or something? So the point that we're not going to get good people, or we're not getting good people, that would mean up to this point we haven't got any good people, and I don't believe that's true. And I don't say we always have to have the top draft pick, because the federal government and the provincial government dealing with homeless and all that, they need all those specialists. So from my perspective, this needs to be done. It needs to be corrected. When you look at the growth over time, and the Canadian Federation of Independent Business and others say at 4% growth when our inflation's been at 2%, this has to eventually have a balancing point. And I think what this council has done, and the previous councils, by bringing this forward, core service review, Deloitte review, that we're starting to bring this back to what I will suggest is a equitable situation. When you look at our pay scales, and the income for an average for a low-end person in Nanaimo was about $37,000, and we pay way over that. I think one of the current jobs they offer is $30 an hour for a receptionist at the pool. So I don't know, I support the motion to go forward with the changes. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Thorpe.
Thank you, Chair. I'm not going to support this. I've stated all the way through this process that I wanted comparatives from other municipalities, and I would welcome a third-party analysis of our compensation packages and the benefits that go with them. I do want us to be competitive and attract the best possible people to our city, and I don't want to penalize our existing staff who have served us well. So I would welcome an analysis of our benefits, as I say, but I am not prepared to push this through at this point. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Bestwick.
Thank you very much. Interesting conversation, of course, and we have been working toward an outcome for many months, if not years, in relation to Bylaw 7000 and what some people would consider its inequities, and some people would value those inequities, of course. And at the end of the day, as the shareholders or the taxpayers, and I know that we're a building inspector is coming back to the city of Nanaimo from the regional district as we speak. I know that people have left employment within our city at other institutions or locations to come into this city and work for the city of Nanaimo. It seems to me as though that when I review the wage packages, the benefits, the holidays, and I make my own comparators, which is what I have to do in absence of anything else in which to base my decisions on. The compensation plan in its entirety is extremely generous. I'm sure there's other reasons why people might wish to work somewhere else, and everybody has their own personal preferences. But I can't for a minute think, unless they have two offers on the table and one's a little bit more money than another or whatever the case might be, that Nanaimo, the city of Nanaimo, I was told 10 years ago that we couldn't get RCMP officers here because they didn't want to come to Nanaimo. And I really struggled with that at the time. I couldn't imagine not wishing to live on Vancouver Island and preferring to live in Fort Nelson. I just really struggled with that. And I still, today, if opportunities are presented in your field of choice, in your profession, in your professional choice, and you can come and work in the city of Nanaimo and live and reside and play and work and raise your children here, I can't imagine somebody saying no because I might get 1 week of holiday that I can't bank and carry over for 20 years. It just would seem rare to me that somebody would think that way. And of course, everybody can think how they wish. So and somebody mentioned a $30 an hour, $37,000. Very few of our positions in the city of Nanaimo pay $30 an hour. Very few. We did do that compensation package review or whatever it was 3 years ago or 4 years ago, and where everybody was banded and put into different bands and so on and so forth, and that increased the majority of people's benefits and wages. So I think we are extremely comparable. I think we're extremely comparable to Kelowna and Kamloops and Prince George and Langley and Abbotsford and Duncan and the regional district of Nanaimo and Courtenay and Langford. I'm sure we're in the top 10%. So even with these minor amendments that I would just simply refer to as corrections. So I will be supporting the motion. Thank you.
Councillor Fuller.
Yeah, I too will not be supporting the motion. The idea that we have a problem attracting people is ludicrous to me. 30 applications for an interim city manager. That's a lot. I think that was more applications than we got for the last application for an interim manager. We have no problems attracting staff. The majority of those staff that have left retired or moved on to better positions. I believe only 4 or 5 were let go over a 4-year period. That's far less than other councils. But the prevailing social media opinion is that we've let go dozens, if not hundreds of employees. And one of the prevailing opinions on social media at this point, and I'll quote it, is there's a belief that this would severely hamper, this is the quote, severely hamper, and this is a quote from a potential councillor, that this would severely hamper the new council's ability to hire and promote experienced staff. This in no way hampers anything like that. What this does in a lot of ways is this takes care of some of the unfunded liabilities that came out that many people heard us talk about at the budget meetings that no one wants to talk about, because these are in the realm of millions of dollars that we do not budget for. And when we have to make these payouts, they aren't budgeted for. So those come out of other areas. So this will actually promote hiring staff, I think, and it will take care of some of the other things. There's no way on this earth that it will stop people from wanting to come to the city of Nanaimo and work here. All the so-called dysfunction over the last 4 years hasn't stopped people. Why would this bylaw?
Councillor Hong.
Thank you. I will support the motion. And in no way does my support for this motion and moving this forward hinder my thoughts or to the staff, to management, that I think of anything less of them. I think this is an outdated document. It needs to be moved forward. I think updated in 2005. It needs to move forward. I think there are some good minor amendments and a lot of cleanup. And I actually look forward to a comprehensive compensation for the next council. I think it's perfect timing. then they can make that decision on where they want to go with it. Like what we did with bylaw 7272. This is a good bylaw to have in place to move forward. And I'm going to kind of reverse what Councillor Fuller said, and that even with this bylaw in place, we lost good staff because of our dysfunction. So it had nothing to do with this bylaw for staff wanting to leave. It was us. Plain and simple. They left. Maybe we'll get some good staff, but I don't think this is something that is going to hinder us retaining our staff. One of the changes I really wanted to see in this was the vacation time. I think everybody needs to take a vacation. For them to be banking the vacation over a decade of working here, that's not good for their health. Like everybody else, you need to use that vacation time. And I know that senior management gets busy and they love their job and they don't want to take that holiday time. I don't think they purposely want to bank it, but I think having this written in them will allow them to, well, let the CAO know that I need my holiday time. If I don't use it, I'm going to lose it. That's going to put emphasis on us to better manage, or the CAO to better manage his team, her team. So I think that these are minor cleanups, and we need to move it forward. And I think this was a liability that we needed to clean up. And hopefully that we can attract new staff, and especially with this comprehensive compensation review, that we might be completely out of whack. But I don't know, maybe we're perfectly in line. We seem to be in line with that. If I recall that we did this at the RDN not that long ago. And that was pretty comparable when I think Nanaimo was put up there. So that's the reason I'll support it, moving it forward. The next council can then have the decision on what the compensation review package is going to look like for staff. They'll have the option of hiring the new CAO to take them on that journey, and for senior management to move forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Yocum.
Thank you. A couple of questions I'd have, maybe some senior councillors or staff could answer for me is, what I recall in the conversations were vacation time and the sick bank were key conversations we've had. So I'd like to, because I don't think, just so the myself, first and foremost, I'm voting accurately, more accurately, but also I'm pretty sure I'm clear, but also so the public can realize, oh, we're just not sitting here trying to be mean spirit. I respect everyone's work too. First of all, our goal is to conduct a respectful workplace. Some we do the best we can, and I believe we do that. And I think we're obviously in fair wages. We all know our wages in our city compared to provincial and federal governments, we exceed in most areas. I'm on a provincial pays grid. I know the pay for provincial grid very well from my line of work. So I think at this level is very accurate. And also, with due respect to everybody, with the respectful workplace, we're here to govern the people's monies to the best of our ability and fair. And we're not here, it's got to be balanced. But also, most importantly here, we're not here to be shop stewards. We got to ensure a safe workplace and all that respectful stuff, absolutely. Don't get me wrong. But we're here also, our main objective is for the people's monies, because I think our last pie chart, our salaries all combined, we're pushing 90%. That doesn't leave very much space for the roads and programs, et cetera, that the public demand us to do. So we got to have, without always drastically increasing taxes. I know we worked hard to keep taxes with 2% or less for the last 4 years. So the questions I would have, I'd like to have a comparison in this from the sick bank, because if it's just rhetoric, call me wrong. But I believe like people will be able to bank sick time their whole career and they're on the city's payroll when they retire for like a year or so, unless that's just rhetoric. And secondly, the same with vacation time. So I believe vacation time should be used, and the sick bank is there, obviously, for when one is ill. I totally respect that. But to be carried over is sort of doesn't make sense to me, and because that's why long-term disabilities kick in, et cetera. So I'll answer those questions. I got a couple more comments after those. Can I please have a comparison or answer those questions from before that on those subjects? And then I got a couple questions after that, if I may, please, from yourself to staff, or a senior council member that knows this a lot better than me.
Mr. Van Horn?
The notion of a person being off, like at retirement, okay, let's talk a couple different things. If I resign tomorrow, I resign tomorrow, walk out the door. I'm not on vacation, like my accumulated vacation, and we pay it out, you're gone. If a person retires, say after 20 years, whatever, there is a mechanism right now that they can use this accumulated vacation that has been banked to push back their retirement date. You have to give the pension corp a fixed date on which you want to start claiming your pension, and they work back from there and put you on vacation. The sick leave gratuity, though, my understanding is that it is paid out. I don't believe that that's a salary continuous thing, but it is only on retirement, only after 5 years continuous service. So someone who quits after 25 years and goes work somewhere else doesn't get it. So, but yeah, the idea of a person being off, for a year, no, it just, to my knowledge, doesn't happen. I've not seen it during my time here, so.
And then, thank you, just follow up then on this bylaw. I couldn't find it in the bylaw 7,000, but what sort of, I respect bargaining rights and what the unions does for the staff and whatnot, and it always seems to be a gradual, up to some 2%, sometimes more, hair less each year, and it's also automatically defaulted to not exempt staff. So, is that accurate?
My understanding, looking back, is that the council of the day voted in, I believe it was 2013, to go to a model where exempt staff got the same increases as QP. It used to be that management group did an annual survey and came to council year after year with, it's going to be this much this year, it's going to be this much the following year. And the decision was made by the council of the day to change it to a model where the exempt staff get the same as QP. And then there's a plan within that every third year that we would do a salary survey just to maintain that, okay, are we outpacing the market? Are we lagging the market? The third year was going to be 2017, but this was not the time to be bringing this forward.
Okay, so I have concern with that because it's usually the exempt staff negotiating on our behalf. So, but that's another subject for the next council, because it's, I won't get into that, but, because it's quite obvious if we're going to negotiate and you're going to automatically get it, is there really a negotiation going on? But that's another subject. So, I don't want to sound too critical, but at the end of the day, it's the people's monies and the coffers are really tight, and I really believe we're a fair city to work in. It's a beautiful place to work. It's a beautiful place to live. And salaries, well, I even go online, our salaries are very, very decent, very fair. So I definitely will be supporting this bylaw 7,000 amendment. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Van Horn?
Yeah, just to the point, exempt staff and the unionized employees getting the same. It's council that approves the mandate for QP bargaining, and I think this is where we can easily get drawn into an artificial distinction between the exempt staff and the QP staff. If it's X% for one, I just don't know why council would be looking to set different numbers for different groups. I think if we looked out there, we'd find a lot of municipalities actually use that because then you're not drawing artificial distinctions between your staff just because they've signed a union card or not.
Well, sorry that I rebut, in fairness to me, since I had one towards me, is, well, 150 plus salary plus to a $40,000 to $50,000 salary, those 2% add up in a hurry. So there is quite a different conversation between exempt and unionized workers. And obviously, I'm not going to have a debate here, but I think you've made your point. I've got my point, and I'll leave it at that for now. Oh, so my final point is, and my 4 years is up. We have not actually had the space to have this conversation. This bylaw 7,000, we've tried to get to the table, hasn't come to the table, nor is this comments I just made. There was no space to have these conversations, so nevertheless, so I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any first-time speakers? Councilor Brennan.
Thank you. Mr. Van Horn, I'm just wondering, you said that you had presented this to staff sort of informally. How was that received?
I didn't talk one-on-one with everyone. I think obviously there was a degree of disappointment because this is, given the timing of it late in this council term, the fact that it is not a negotiated process but an imposed one, I think hit as well. And there was also, one of the questions that came is, hey, why isn't there a look to, if there's a change, to grandfather existing people instead of having a change to them, grandfather the existing group, and then any new person hired can decide, as someone suggested earlier, whether those terms are acceptable to them or not. So.
Thank you. Have you experienced these reviews in other work settings?
I've worked in 2 other local governments in my 15 years in local government, and in both, they grappled with this same issue. In one, the staff and council actually set out with the assistance of a consultant to first establish a compensation philosophy, and someone alluded to it earlier. Where do we want to be in the market? Do we want to be an employer of choice? Do we want to be a fair employer, the best employer, whatever? So set who you're comparing to, and then go out and gather your data, knowing that if you've decided in advance where you want to target yourself and who you feel your comparators are, then the information should yield an appropriate result. In the other local government, we had a consultant come in and actually provide a presentation to the board to say, let's look at all these different types of markets that we talk about when we're comparing to the private sector. Are we talking retail? Are we talking forestry? Are we talking oil and gas? When we're talking about the province, where on that spectrum are we targeting our comparison? So, and then to staff assisting in going out and beating the bushes for information to give to the consultant to say, tell us where to go with this.
Yeah.
And the reason we've done it that way generally is a cost saving when you're going out and using a consultant, because it can be pricey to do. But when we reach out to other local governments, for example, they're often more likely willing to talk to one of their peers and dump information than if they get a call from a consultant. So quite often we will, if we're not doing the work ourselves to gather the information, then we're putting out the feelers in advance. I just got one of these the other day. It came from my boss to say, hey, this, local government is reaching out. They're going to be wanting information. Help them out when the time comes.
Mm-hmm. So your experience has been that there's been a more professional sort of evaluation. And I don't mean professional in terms of decorum.
Yeah, third party.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's been involvement of the elected officials, involvement of staff, involvement of a consultant. We all have our roles to play in that. But the consultant is that external expert because, as I said at the outset, I, he, she, we're all people affected by this. And I think for the people that are, they elect you, you hire us, their interest is going to be in making sure that you have somebody who doesn't have a finger in this guiding you to that information.
Okay, thank you. And I'm just going to end by saying that it's been mentioned several times over the last while that we've been dealing with this, that, it's just been hard to get it here, and it's been, I guess the implication is that staff are dragging their feet on it. My experience in this over the past, say since 2011, is that this issue has been brought before the council of the day several times, at least once during each term. And the councils of the day were satisfied that bylaw 7000 represented the city's interests and the employees' interest, and they were satisfied with it, even though there was some urging to change it along these lines. That didn't happen, and the other councils were determined to maintain a work environment for their staff that was fair and reasonable in everybody's point of view.
Thank you. Councillor Armstrong.
Thank you. I just wanted to state if this does go through, which it's looking like it will, would our council members consider grandfathering those existing staff? That's just something I've discussed it before. I think reading all the other bylaws done by Vancouver, Toronto, and those, they all did grandfather their changes, so, and I think it's because it could stop some legal challenges, et cetera. So I would just request consideration of that. Thank you.
Councillor Kipp.
Yeah, thank you. There's more than just staff and council affected by this. There's taxpayers. The taxpayers have had now under Public Services 3255, we've discovered something like an $8 million unfunded asset, or unfunded by asset liability. And that's what this is addressing, those payouts, those things that aren't in our budget. And I say it's unfunded by an asset because it's not in our budget, but it is funded by a surplus turned into an asset, which I have a problem with. This bylaw was 2005. It's dated. And to say that staff and council found it fair and reasonable, I don't think they considered the growth and considered the taxpayer. What I'm considering here is now, after 10 years of complete growth, as I've said, up to 51% average over 10 years, I'm looking at being fair and reasonable to the taxpayer. That's all I'm doing with this. I'm trying to promote a fair and equitable system for the taxpayer. We have had a ballooning budget for decades. I think when I started, it was about 120, 130, about 10 years ago. It's up pushing 200 now. We've heard that the high percentage of it, 80% plus maybe now, maybe wage and benefit, leaving 20% to deal with our assets and rehabilitation of all of our infrastructure. So this has been on the table every year, and then it's convinced that, no, we're not going to get people. The same arguments have come up on this for the years I've sat here, that we're not going to get people if we don't have this, if we don't do it. But my concern is that all are affected by this, not just staff and council, the public, and it's an unfunded asset that was pointed out to us by the people who have now left the corporation, and we still haven't really got the answer on that because we're waiting until 2019, when this council's gone, to relay where that asset and those public services accounting board rules sit. So for me, this is timely. 2005, that's how many years ago? Can I count? Needs to be corrected. Thank you. Massive correction.
Thank you. Councillor Fuller.
Try to be quick. I take exception to the comment that bringing this so late in council is a bit of a challenge. We've been going at this for almost a year, and this isn't the only one that we've been working on. The P-card itself policy was recommended to move forward in February. Haven't seen anything on this. So I'm starting to think, as councillors, are we supposed to just do nothing the last year and leave it all for the next council? Is that what we're supposed to do? I don't know. The public could speak on that at some point. I believe that it is our responsibility to deal with things that come up as you find out about them, not leave them for someone else to deal with. This one has been going, as Councillor Kipp said, it's an old bylaw, old bylaw. And we should be reviewing things like this every 5 years, not 12, 13, whatever. So I will definitely be supporting the motion, and even in supporting the motion, we are moving this to the next council, and I would have loved to have seen the motion be 1, 2, and 3 of the bylaw, but I will support the motion.
Thank you very much. There are no further speakers, but I just wanted to finish off the debate by saying that I can't support this as it's proposed. It's a good piece of work in as much as it modernizes some aspects of the agreement between ourselves and our employees. However, there are only 65 people out of almost 1,000. So here's where the challenge comes. You're treating one group who's unrepresented, who doesn't have a union, who's vulnerable, who is being treated differently because they don't have representation. The next one is that this is inferior to the IAFF and CUPE collective agreements. Therefore, that's another reason I cannot vote in favor of this. We're not talking about wages here, but when Councillor Kipp rattled off some numbers about council over a certain period at 34%, exempt at 38, CUPE at 58, IAFF at 73. Why hasn't this council gone after IAFF and CUPE? We all just put our hands up when it comes time for those folks because we're not prepared to endure a strike. But a group of employees that are unrepresented, we have no issue going after them. So I can't support this. Mr. Rudolph.
Your Worship, thank you. I'm late to this process, but I feel because I've got some experience around the country in different provinces, I could at least add some objective comments because I'm not particularly and directly impacted by the outcome of this discussion. So I think I am somewhat impartial, but clearly my job is to work particularly with the group of people that are impacted by this. My observation is that this has been a body of work and a piece of work that Council has invested a lot of time in and is arriving at a conclusion for a decision. There was a need for an update to this bylaw. There's a lot of administrative and updating pieces that I think all parties would agree to, but there are a couple of significant components to this bylaw which represent significant change. And I just wanted to note that there are a couple of significant changes to this bylaw. This is impacting the group of staff that have carried the freight for the last number of years. They are working hard. There's a lot of overtime that's not claimed. In fact, probably the majority of overtime is not claimed by staff. A lot of people are in here late in the evenings and do that, and they're not expecting to be paid, but they're doing it. And I just wanted to acknowledge that because as all the other activities take place, they're still making sure that the city is running effectively. And I know Council's not criticizing that. So I want to see them as an asset as well as a cost center. I just wanted to mention that. Overall, while it's improving the language in the document, it's not improving our competitiveness as a municipality to attract and retain staff. It will motivate some staff to leave. Those are the ones that will be impacted in terms of their vacation and that type of thing. I'm not saying that's necessarily a bad thing. I'm just saying that there will be some attrition as a result of that, and maybe that's not a bad thing. I'm just saying that that's one of the consequences. The compensation package that council or is available to staff is a bunch of things, and this is a big part of it, but it's not the entire part. And as I indicated in my comments, there will be additional reviews, and this will impact the other parts of that review process, and it may put pressure on other aspects from a retaining and retention point of view and attraction. So I just wanted to make a few observations. I think Council's sincere in its decision, whatever way it moves here. I'm not being critical of that. And I just wanted to send a kudos out to the people that are being impacted. It was unpacked for them at a meeting recently. They're resigned to it, but I wouldn't say they're enthused about it. They respect you're the governing body, and you're in a position to do what you so see fit. But just wanted to make a few comments.
Thank you. Councillor Hong.
Thank you. Thank you, Jake, for those comments, and I agree. Like I said before, this has nothing to do with what I think of the management staff and what Mayor McKay said, that it's not fair. You're right, it isn't fair. I wish I could go after IAF. Somebody makes an agreement, and then the rest of the province follows. It's not fair. I've said that multiple times, and we can't fight it. We want to fight it. What happens? We go to arbitration, and you lose because Vancouver and Burnaby set that rate. It's not. And I've expressed that at UBCM to anybody else that listen. And it's not fair. And this isn't by any means a punishment for that management staff. And that's what I'm saying. I'm looking forward to that management review in 2019. Hopefully it comes sooner than later, because that is going to give us an indication. I don't want staff to leave on Exodus because of this, and I don't think they will. Like Jake said, some might, but that may be a good thing. Who knows? We might get somebody better. So to have this done and to move it forward, and I tend to agree actually with Councillor Armstrong that maybe we should look at some of those and give them some sort of a limitation. Not the full, I don't know what that is, but I wouldn't mind having a look at a staff report on what that would cost us, on who it impacts the most? Because from what I see, first of all, our bylaws manager, Mr. Dave LaBerge over there, I don't think this change affects him that much as opposed to whoever's been here for the last 20 years. Is that correct?
Not quite clear on how it might impact him different. Anyone in the door right now is impacted by this because it'll be, after an appropriate notice period, that those items disappear for them. So I'm sorry, I'm just trying to understand the question.
Mainly the bank of carry forward of holiday and sick time, where you banked it 20 years ago at $20 an hour, and now you're making $90 an hour, and you retire, you cash out at $90 an hour as opposed to the exact amount that you were paying into. Is that how that works? Is that what happened with the previous managers that everybody's heard over the previous years that were getting all these big payouts?
Yes, they are paid out at the current rate at the time a person leaves. And remember, one of the discussions we had in the April 18th meeting was about banking dollars instead of days, and whether that impacts things different, so that you don't have that accumulation. But that's not where this council wound up on the language.
Yeah, great, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Bestwick.
Thank you very much. I'll just say it again. I think it's a correction that is a necessary correction. And because one time a year when this SOFI comes out is probably the time of the year that I get the most calls about the Statement of Financial Information. And when we all know that we're 80 to 85% for wages and benefits in our city's operations, at some point in time, you have to take a look and say, okay, we're growing by 800 to 1,000 people. This is what's happening in our city, blah, 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 blah. How are we going to be able to do what we'd like to do when the majority of those monies are, you can't touch them. It's impossible. So the only option you have is to raise taxes. And I keep hearing, well, it's in the budget. It's in the budget. Well, of course it's in the budget. It would be the first thing that I put in the budget if I was in the position to do it. For what's in the green sheets here, if people get a chance to read it, and they do read it, there's some things in there. There's 240 hours of time that people are putting in overtime that they can apply to their bank in time off, in cash, or a combination of the two. So I don't want people out there to think that people put in overtime and they aren't compensated for it. Because they're compensated if they're entitled to it up to 240 hours a year, which may or may not be in these green sheets. And in 3 different ways to take it: cash, time off, or a combination thereof. Some of the people, not all of the people. I want to go to the IAFF. Of course, we could, as a council, say we think that the agreement that Richmond does every year that drives, or Delta, that drives every other city in the province. So if we compared the calls and the type of calls and the amount of calls that they're doing in Surrey and Richmond and Burnaby and to Nanaimo, maybe that's how we should determine how it's done. I don't know, which might be a good thing to do a comprehensive compensation review of how things get done. But I guess if you're a firefighter in Nanaimo, you need to have the same qualifications as a firefighter anywhere, so you get paid the same rate, despite where you live, where it's $500,000 to buy a house here and $1 million to buy a house in Vancouver. In my opinion, there's going to be an exodus of people on the mainland and beyond to come to the island for $25,000 a year less, or 50 in these levels, because we're seeing it. Mayor McKay and I sit on the executive committee at the Regional District of Nanaimo. And we did something that I guess I'm not even allowed to say it, because it was in camera. And we tried desperately to reduce. And so when I hear that every council, year over year over year, has looked at these things and for 10 years or whatever, well, the majority of council maybe, but not all of council. And if it was that way, that once council has made a decision, we live with it, then we probably shouldn't be in the situation that we're in today in these last few years. If we adopt that philosophy, that once council makes a decision, it's council's decision, and we live with it, like it or not. So this actually has to be done. And if there's corrections to be made, then the next council can deal with the corrections that are being made here. I hope.
Councillor Thorpe.
Thank you, Chair. I'll be brief, but I do feel I need to speak again, and I want to start by thanking Mr. Rudolph for his comments. Expert opinion, I think, and coming from a reasonably impartial viewpoint, just being new to our city. Yes, this bylaw needs to be reviewed. It's overdue for that, and there's a lot of housekeeping type of cleanups that I have no problem with in the bylaw. But there are some things in it that I think are fairly significant to our exempt staff that we are hurrying to make those changes without the benefit of expert third-party review and advice. And I don't see why this couldn't wait until it is part of the compensation review process planned for 2019. Quite frankly, I have nothing but admiration for our city staff, both union and exempt. And I see some of these changes as a slap in the face. And so for that reason, I will not support it.
Thank you very much. So there are no further speakers. I'd say the council's ready to call the question. All those in favor of the motion? Opposed? Show for the record, Councillor Hong, Councillor Brennan, Mayor McKay, Councillor Thorpe, and Councillor Armstrong opposed. So, motion is defeated. Is there an alternate direction to staff? Councillor Armstrong.
Yeah, I would like to make a motion that we defer the report to the incoming council and let them make the decision.
Thank you. Is there a seconder? Councillor Brennan, thank you very much. Call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Show. Councillor Hong, Bestwick, Kipp, Fuller opposed. Motion carries.
Was that an affirmative then?
Okay.
Move on.
Okay.
Yeah, next item.
Next item is under public service. Proposed road closure adjacent to 400 Newcastle Avenue. To be introduced by Mr. Bill Corson, Deputy Director of Community Development. Mr. Corson.
Thanks, Your Worship. Before you tonight, we have road closure bylaw relating to the Nanaimo Yacht Club. As council recalls, we have a 30-year lease with the yacht club. In 2017, we renewed our lease with the yacht club for another 5 years. As part of that, my staff were updating the lease plan, which included a road closure area. And that area was based on an old plan, which needs to be updated. So we've had to redo the road closure. So basically, if this was approved by council, we'll be able to update the lease area plan, which doesn't change. And there's no other changes to the actual lease agreements. Really a procedural thing. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Cribb.
If there's no debate, I'll motion that council authorize the road closure of a portion of Newcastle Ave adjacent to 400 Newcastle Ave.
Thank you. So it's been moved and seconded. Any discussion? Seeing none, call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? motion carries.
Motion that highway closure and dedication removal bylaw number 2018, number 7255, or is that 2018 bylaw, to provide for highway closure and dedication removal of a portion of Newcastle Avenue adjacent to 400 Newcastle pass first reading. And motion that highway closure and dedication removal bylaw 2018, number 7255, pass second reading. I can do both of those at the same time, or not? Then just the first part.
Thank you. So it's been moved and seconded. Any discussion? Seeing none, call the question. Those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries.
Now, motion number 3, motion that highway closure and dedication removal bylaw 2018, number 7255, pass second reading.
And it's been seconded by Councillor Armstrong. Thank you. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Next item, One Port Drive, C-SPAN right-of-way final disposition, to be introduced by Mr. Bill Corson, Deputy Director of Community Development. Sure glad I don't have to listen to that Lindsay fella tonight.
Hopefully he's having a glass of wine right now. I'm sure he is. So I have a PowerPoint for you, Your Worship, just to kind of discuss, take council and the public through this staff report. But basically, council is being asked tonight to provide the final approval for the city to move forward with the redevelopment of One Port Drive. And if Derek puts up the PowerPoint, I'll explain this all to you. So this is the One Port Drive property that the city purchased in 2013. And when the city purchased it, we knew it came with a series of major encumbrances, and there was a reason why the private sector didn't want to purchase it. The green area and the water lot is covered by a right-of-way that runs in perpetuity to C-SPAN. And as long as they have roll-on, roll-off truck service or rail for once every 180 days, that land is theirs to use. Then we also had a couple other leases that we needed to terminate and to deal with. So really the site was not developable when we purchased it in 2013. Since then, we've gone through, done a lot of work on the site, but really for the public, they haven't seen a lot of change on it yet. So some will recall we had a larger initiative for this whole area called the South Downtown Waterfront Initiative. We worked with FCM and got grants and did quite a substantial amount of environmental work on the property. We terminated leases with the 2 tenants we had. We did some select demolition to get the site moving forward. We did some archaeological work. Council adopted the One Port Drive master plan last year in December. And we've been off and working on the detailed design for what's called the Front Street Extension and the waterfront walkway project that takes people down to the Assembly Wharf. So lots going on, but nothing for anyone to really see yet. And that's really because with the right-of-way sitting on the property, you can't do anything. And so that image illustrates the existing C-SPAN right-of-way, which is 9.7 acres of land and 5.7 acres of water. So in 2015, council and staff recognized that we need to come to an arrangement with C-SPAN, and we were able to put together a memorandum of understanding. And basically that set out a process for how we would work with C-SPAN and Southern Railway of Vancouver Island to remove the right-of-way, and that included timelines and kind of the land areas we were looking at. So we've been working on that for the last 2 or 3 years. We came to council just, I'm going to lose my date, sorry, September 17th, with a letter of intent that was finally put together, which spelled out exactly how the deal would work. And under this agreement, C-SPAN will discharge the entire right-of-way. As part of that, the city will transfer a portion of upland and water lot, which is currently being used by the rail operations to C-SPAN. We'll compensate them because the right-of-way has value. And at the same time, we're updating infrastructure to make sure that the property is a standalone property for them. And we need to undertake some initial environmental work so that each of their parcels can be subdivided. And the closing date is anticipated to be end of April of next year. So it kind of gives you an image of the lands that are being transferred to C-SPAN. And if you can see the red outline, that's the entire city property. So essentially the city will keep all the land north of the railway tracks. You can sort of make out where the road would continue through, the Front Street Extension. and as well as where the waterfront walkway would wrap around the property. The disposition of the land is consistent with the land use plan that comes from the One Port Drive master plan. So this is the master plan that was adopted in December by council, and this shows you the land uses that are proposed for the property. So it's the use of C-SPAN, continuing to use that land for industrial is consistent with the plan. And that was kind of the conceptual plan that came out of the master plan that the public and council are probably familiar with. So by removing the right-of-way, where council will be in a position to actually move forward with this development starting next spring. And sorry, I haven't updated this. So we are working with C-SPAN to get the subdivision put together, which requires a development variance permit. We've removed that from the agenda tonight. We'll have to come back to a later council meeting for that. But under our letter of intent with C-SPAN, we'll be able to tender the walkway and Front Street extension project this fall and actually start work early next year prior to the actual transfer date. So I think that's a summary. I think that's all I have, Your Worship.
Thank you. Questions? Councillor Kipp.
No, I'm ready to move a motion.
Okay.
If there's no questions. Recommend the motion. Can I do this all in one fell swoop, or does it have to be separated?
To request if anyone is in the attendance
Oh, that's
wants
right,
to
too.
speak to this project.
On the bottom of the
Thank you.
page.
It is requested that council hear anyone wishing to speak regarding One Port Drive, C-SPAN right-of-way final disposition.
Hello, Mayor and Council. My name is Bill Manners from Nanaimo. The question I have relating to this is the disposition of the land and the right-of-way. How does that affect the rail access to Vancouver Island that was dedicated as part of the Confederation of British Columbia and Vancouver Island?
It remains in place. It remains in place, sir.
If it
Because they will own in fee-
remains, then how are we, I don't understand how we are selling it and buying it without affecting change.
So we have a piece of land, and we have a piece of right-of-way on top of it.
Yeah?
So we are buying their right-of-way. We own the land.
So by buying the
exception-
right-of-way,
with-
we will not lose the
That's-
connection?
That's correct,
Thank
because
you.
we will be giving them a piece of fee simple land as well that they continue rail operations on.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else wishing to speak regarding One Port Drive, C-SPAN right-of-way final disposition? And for the third time. Seeing none? Councillor Kipp.
I'll ask through the staff, do I need to move it all at once? I think it is all one motion, is it? Okay, do I need to read it all then? I will. Motion that council approve the acquisition of the C-SPAN right-of-way at One Port Drive for the purchase price of $991,465. Approve the disposition of 3.6 acres of water lot and 5.7 acres of upland with an estimated market value of $3,050,500 from One Port Drive to C-SPAN Ferry Corporation. Delegate to the Chief Administrative Officer the power to approve the transfer agreement between the City of Nanaimo, C-SPAN Ferry Corporation, and Southern Railway of Vancouver Island Limited to formalize the commitments outlined in the letter of intent dated 2018 September 13, and any related commitments on such terms and conditions as the Chief Administrative Officer deems appropriate in his sole discretion, and direct the mayor and corporate officers to execute the necessary documents to effect the transaction.
Thank you. Is there a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Hong. Thank you. Seeing no discussion, unless council wishes discussion. Seeing none, call the question. All is in favor. Opposed? Motion carried. Next item is development permit application DP 1089 at 285 Rose Hill Street. Mr. Corson.
Thanks, Your Worship. Council is being asked to approve a development permit for a 23-bed housing project run by the Vancouver Island Mental Health Society. The project is located on the corner of Rose Hill and Terminal. Council's being asked to, for two variances. One is for a front yard setback off of Terminal Avenue to vary it from 3 meters to 1.5, and a parking variance from 5 spots to 2. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So we have a delegation that wishes to speak, and that is Mr. Howard Kim of Low Hammond Rowe Architects and Taryn O'Flanagan of Vancouver Island Mental Health Society. Good evening.
Hi. Thank you, Mayor and Council. Thank you for this chance to speak on behalf of this project. I'm not going to say too much about it. I think the Council is fairly familiar with the project. We've worked hard with staff and have approval from the advisory design panel on this project. We feel that it's extremely great addition to the city of Nanaimo for its location and as a great asset to this part of the city. So we do hope that you'll approve the development permit for this project. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. O'Flanagan. Do you have anything you wish to add?
No, thank you.
Thank you very much. Any questions for the delegation? I see none. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I'll move a motion that council issues development permit number 1089 at 285 Rose Hill with the following variances. Reduce the minimum required front yard setback from 3 meters to 1.5 meters, and reduce the required on-site parking from 5 spaces to 2 spaces.
Thank you. Is there a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Hong. I'm sorry, Councillor Armstrong, I see your name up here.
Yeah, for this.
For this, go ahead.
Thank you. I won't be supporting the variance for the parking. I have concerns of going from 5 down to 2, based around medical practitioners that may want to go there, visitors, all that type of stuff. It's going to put another burden on the already burdened parking area of the neighborhood, so I will not support. I think it's a great project, but I have a big issue with the variance of parking. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any other speakers? Seeing none, call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Show Councillor Armstrong opposed. Motion carries.
Your Worship?
Yes, Ms. Curry?
Before you move on to the next item, if you wanted to do the mayor's report, I do have 3 slides ready. One has the one motion that council moved to rise and report on, and the other 2 slides have the breakdown of the costs that Mr. Blackwood could put up on the screen if you want, if and when you're ready to do your mayor's report.
Thank you. How about we keep roaring through here, and we're going to be going into a break at 9 o'clock, so we can do this as soon as we come back from the break.
Thank you.
Thank you. Development permit application number DP 1100 at 65 Pride Avenue, to be introduced by Mr. Bill Corson. There's 2 delegates.
So again, before you tonight is a development permit for a 4-story, 48-room housing development. If you can picture it, it's located behind the 7-Eleven on Bowen and Pride Avenue. The applicant has 3 variances they're requesting. One is a front yard setback variance off of Pride Avenue. Another is a building height variance of just 0.6 meters for 2 shed roofs. And then there's a parking variance of 4 spaces from 54 down to 50. And I believe the applicant is here to present the project to you as well.
The applicant's not on the agenda. We do have a delegation for the.
Yeah, that's the Deneau.
Is that the applicant?
That's the Deneau group.
Okay, so that is
Yep. Sorry, Your
Sophie
Worship.
Deneau and Robin Kelly?
Yes.
Very good, thank you. Clears that up. Please come down.
Sorry for the confusion. Darush is away for the week, and he actually didn't nominate us as a delegation. We didn't learn that until Friday afternoon. So that was why we had to ask at the last minute. I'm Robin Kelly, and this is my wife, Sophie Denux. So for the project, he left us with a 42-slide presentation. I'll try and whip through a lot of it for you guys. Basically, it is located at Pride and Bowen, as you can see on the screen. The unique aspect of it is that there's actually 2 frontages, which are considered main interfaces with the streetscape. Again, there it is there. in the core of the transit corridor, the Core 1 zone. This image here, we wanted to highlight when we were designing the project, when we looked at the way it slopes upward, we really wanted to make the side of the building kind of like as a focal point, as it will be pretty visible as you're driving up Bowen. It's almost like the gateway. So as we see later on, we actually played with the balconies and the way the lights and the colors were to try and influence that and took extra care of that. We see, again, it's a close-up. That's the current house on Pride Street. Across. Right here we see on Pride there, one of the defining features is we actually have 4 transit stops. 1 bus stop's right adjacent. We're at the intersection of two bicycle lanes in the regional pathway network. Again, there's Bowen. The view of the 7-Eleven. Again, that's the bus stop right out front. I don't know why Darush put this many slides, I apologize. There's our floor plans of the ground floor. And one of the variances for the setback along Pride, the city staff wanted us, because it's considered a major street, we essentially have 2 front yards, not really a front and a rear yard. So the idea was to pull up both frontages about 50% along both avenues to create a livable streetscape. We also tried to shield the parking by putting most of it under the building. Again, sorry, on this one we have 2 mobility accessible units on the ground floor and 1 that will be modified so it can be easily accessible in the 2-bedroom for at least 1 of 2 people that would have a mobility issue. Again, there's the curve of the building and the jagged parts are the way the balconies will seesaw to kind of break up the facade. Another defining characteristic is we put public art on the side of the building. They'll be visible both from Bowen and coming down. This will be better defined with the city staff as we go along. But the idea was to highlight the history of the Millstream Creek area, including the reemergence of salmon, the historical nature of that, and there will be some interpretive boards for the ecology. Again, that's the view from, actually it's from Pride Avenue. And Gary Noble, when he's here, he really requested that we made it look like, again, both facades for a pleasant interface. The sign will, the fence, it won't be wood like that, that'll be improved. That's the north facing south. Again, along Bowen. The project data was in there. So the variances, again, to summarize, the building height, it's actually only for the roof, the articulation on the roof on the left that we'd see in the diagram. Staff and our architect actually wanted us to provide a more defined visual interface rather than just having one flat slab, and that's what we endeavored to do. The setback on Bowen, I thought it was actually on Pride, but I guess it's on Bowen. That was for having the interface with the street. For the parking, we provide 50 stalls based on our mix of units. We took into consideration the fact that there's major cycling lanes on both of the adjacent streets. We have ample bike storage. We're adjacent to 4 transit stops. We have a 7-Eleven right next door. We're close to a town site in Bowen. And we're actually working on a CMHC program, which I'll discuss a bit. But the other thing, the parking I want to mention, I was on one of the committees, the advisory committees, I guess, from the private sector side. When we started, we were informed that we had 10 too many, and potentially if there was a 10% or discount, we could have 14 stalls too many under the old bylaw. So we looked at the site and we figured, okay, how many parking stalls work? And then we came up with the number 50, and at that point, under the initial draft, we would only been required to have 40. But design panel actually wanted us to remove a stall, that was the only part we didn't follow. We kept the extra stall. And when we found out about a month ago that the numbers had been revised slightly for that area, we talked to staff, looked at the site, the location of it, the fact that we do have the transit stops and the bike lanes nearby, and based on our history of operating buildings in the hospital region, we felt it worked fine, and they encouraged us to continue. For the CMHC program we're looking at, it's one that just came out this year. We spoke in February with them about Nanaimo. They didn't actually realize Nanaimo really had affordable housing. When you talk to the Toronto office, that there is affordable housing problem here. So the goal for that is it's essentially we have to have, our rents have to be minimum across the board, 10% below market, what market would be. I think 20% of them have to be affordable for the median income earner in the area. The way we distribute it is basically up to our discretion. We could discount a few units to be zero, or have them and then have some at market. The goal is just having them 10% below market, and it has to be validated by appraiser, and CMHC would monitor us for 10 years, and the city doesn't really have to do anything. This is something more we've just been examining on our projects, because we have found that the rents have gotten skyrocketed a fair bit. And for us, if we hold the building long-term, so we're not looking at getting the most highest rent quick to flip off and move on. And I guess I'll leave it with you, because like I said, the rest of the slides at Darush is just more about the design. Thank you.
Thank you. Don't go away. Councillor Armstrong.
Yes, do you have visitor parking on site?
Yes, there are. There's two.
How many spots?
2 visitor stalls.
That's it?
I believe that's what it was in the bylaw. We complied with the bylaw on that. Same thing with the handicap stalls. We put the same amount of mobility stalls.
Thank you.
I've got a question for you. Can you tell me what your expected cost per square foot for rent would be?
It depends on the units. We looked at it more on the unit sizes. So we had an appraiser look at it. We looked at what we're getting at McRobb and Townsite, and the rents on the 2 bedrooms up there, they're hitting like 1,700. So ours would be across the board. We have to be less. Some of our studios we've been looking at, we'd be around that we'd put affordable would probably be around 700. But the studios aren't micro. They're not 300 units. They're 450, 500 square feet. We haven't really defined it yet. It's just that we have to get it evaluated by an appraiser for the rents in the area, and then set them 10% below.
Okay, so you've got no, what's the cost per square foot?
The cost per square foot, we'd probably be around, on the average, because the smaller units would be pushing 170, the larger units slightly less. And up the road, I think the latest Eagle View one, they were at about 211 per square foot.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Appreciate that. Under your CMHC program, would you have to sign a covenant on the property? Or a housing agreement?
With CMHC we do. With the city we didn't, because there was really, this is something we decided to do on our own accord, and there actually isn't, we hadn't asked the city for anything on this. But with CMHC, sorry, it's a 10-year program. It is a covenant with them for 10 years, and they review it every year with the lender.
Great, thank you very much. Councillor Fuller.
You mentioned 2 accessible units. Can you define accessible?
They're actually going to be, it's too bad Darush isn't here, but they're to the BC Housing Standard. They're actually a requirement with the city under the Tier 1 density we're getting. We're going to add a third end, but I think with the parking, there was issues with the extra handicap stalls. So the third one, because it's a 2-bedroom, on that one, we were going to modify it. So we'd have it would be for someone that was in a walker with, they'd have a walk-in shower and that. But 2 of them have to be accessible. Like I understand there's been issues in the past of some people that have moved in thinking it's accessible, and it's actually not. But these are BC Housing Standard. They have to be designed. The one we did at McRobb, we did have the cutaway on the shower, level ground, a seat in the shower. Like this isn't they're BC Housing Standard, and we're obligated to under the bylaw too.
So, okay. My question is, will they be accessible for someone with a wheelchair, like lowered stovetops, side-by-side washer, dryer, et cetera, et cetera?
Yeah, the washer dryer was going to be an all-in-one, so it'd just be one of the condensing units. But yeah, they wouldn't have the dryer up top. These 2 are definitely mobility ones, for sure.
Okay, so definitely the appliances would be reachable for someone in a wheelchair?
Yes.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I have no further questions.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Kipp.
Ready to move motion?
Certainly.
Okay, I recommend the motion that council issue development permit DP 1100 at 65 Pride Avenue with the following variances. Reduce the minimum front yard setback along Pride Avenue from 6 meters to 3.9. Increase the maximum building height from 14 meters to 14.6 meters, and reduce the required on-site parking from 54 spaces to 50 spaces.
Thank you very much. It's been moved and seconded. Any discussion? Seeing none, call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Next one is development permit application number DP 1110 at 450, excuse me, Wentworth Street, to be introduced by Mr. Bill Corson. Mr. Corson.
Thanks, Your Worship. So this development permit is for a renovation and expansion of an office building on Selby and Wentworth. The applicant is proposing a full basement and an addition to the existing building to the north. Two variances are being requested. One is a side yard setback from 3 meters to 2.25 meters, and also to allow a second story to be office, which under the DT8 zoning is supposed to be ground floor only. So those are the two variances. Thank you.
Thank you. I don't see any questions. Councillor Kipp.
Okay, recommend the motion that council issues development permit number 1110 at 450 Wentworth Street with the following variances: reduce the minimum required side yard setback from 3 meters to 2.25 meters, and permit a commercial use on the second story of a commercial building within the downtown Old City mixed use DT8 zone.
Is there a second? Seconded by Councillor Yocum. Thank you. Any discussion? Seeing none, call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. The next one is an affordable rental housing agreement at 2020 Estevan Road, to be introduced by Mr. Bill Corson.
Thank you, Worship. So it's the housing agreement for the Breckin United Church property that council is familiar with. The project is a 74-unit rental housing project with a church on the ground level. Part of the rezoning, which council approved in 2017, required a housing agreement. This is being brought forward. Under the agreement, 38 units of the project will have to be below market rent for 40 years. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Kipp.
I motion that the housing agreement bylaw 2018 number 7270 to secure 38 affordable rental units within a new 74-unit development at 2020 Estevan Road in Nanaimo pass first reading.
Thank you. It's been moved and seconded. Any discussion? Seeing none, call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries.
I motion that housing agreement bylaw 2018 number 7270 pass second reading.
Thank you. It's been moved and seconded. I see no speakers. Call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries.
And I motion that housing agreement bylaw 2018 number 7270 pass third reading.
Thank you. It's been moved and seconded. Call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Next one is housing agreement bylaw number 2018-7269 at 2185 Salmon Road, to be introduced by Mr. Bill Corson.
Thank you, Your Worship. So this one is for a residential shelter for women and children fleeing violence. The housing agreement limits the number of occupants to the single-family house to 10 people. And the project is being purchased and led by BC Housing. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I see no questions. Councillor Kipp.
A motion that housing agreement bylaw 2018 number 7269 to increase the maximum permanent occupancy of 2185 Salmon Road to 10 persons for the purpose of providing shelter to women and children fleeing violence pass first reading.
Thank you. It's been seconded by Councillor Armstrong. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries.
Motion that housing agreement bylaw 2018 number 7269 pass second reading.
Thank you. See no speakers. Call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries.
Motion that housing agreement bylaw 2018 number 7269 pass third reading.
Thank you. Moved and seconded. Call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Covenant amendment at 6201 Oliver Road, to be introduced by Mr. Bill Corson.
Your Worship, I'm sorry, I didn't actually have this one with me tonight.
I Okay, I can just make a
Yep.
motion.
Thank you.
I think I can make the motion. The council directs staff to amend the existing section 219 covenant FA 009239, registered on the title of 6201 Oliver Road, in order to remove language referencing a previous development plan regarding geotechnical considerations, works and service requirements, tree protection, use, density, and height.
Thank you. It's been moved and seconded. Discussion. Councillor Bastwick.
Thank you. So this was originally done back in 2005, and then redone, I think, in 2011. And now, if I understand this correctly, the covenant agreements are removing 5 of the 6 covenants that were placed on this property? Is that what do I understand that correctly?
Your worship, so my understanding was when Insight had these properties, the entire project was blanketed with these covenants. And over time, as the parcels have built out, the covenants that apply to specific areas have been met. So this is basically removing the pieces that are no longer required for this specific parcel.
The pieces that are no longer required for this piece of the parcel for this new development, but were included, which includes off-site road improvements, so there won't be any off-site road improvements necessary. I'm guessing they've all been done?
Yes, my understanding is that we've gone through the to-do list and they've all been ticked off. And the applicant's asking for the covenant to be removed now because it's not applicable anymore.
And tree retention, there's no requirement on this portion of the property to be redeveloped to have any tree retention?
Well, we have our bylaw, which obviously supersedes this, so.
We have our bylaw.
The tree management bylaw.
So would this apply to all previous properties that have?
So when this covenant was put together, they were very specific about which areas trees were going to be retained on the property and on specific parcels, and some parcels it didn't apply to. So I know on one of the parcels, which isn't this one, but on an uplands parcel, there was a requirement for about a 20-meter buffer that kind of swayed like a wave. So this covenant was broad. It covered the 7 or 8 parcels at the time.
And underground parking is adjusted to from how many to how many?
I'm sorry, Your Worship, I can't answer that question.
The reason I'm asking that one is because obviously some councillors here are very adamant about parking, and especially in a complex that there's parking up and down the streets by the Northtown Centre. Uplands is extremely congested. The new development, if we're reducing the amount of underground parking by 15%, then from 65 to 50, it adds up to 15%. Then I'm just wondering what those are in numbers.
Yeah, so Your Worship, I won't be able to answer those questions for you tonight. If you wish, you might want to defer it till the 15th when Dale Lindsay's back. I mean, I believe staff have done the research on this, but I won't be able to answer that question for you.
Okay, and I'm not trying to put you on the spot. There's 6 out of 7 covenants that are being removed from a very dense project. And I'm not doubting that staff have done everything that they would have needed to do to bring this recommendation forward.
Yeah.
This is my first opportunity to ask a question in real time. So that's what I'm doing. So
Yeah, I
I
apologize,
don't
I'm not
expect us to
familiar.
slow business down because of what answers I need. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I see no further questions. So we call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. The next one, we're getting into bylaws. The first one is zoning amendment bylaw 2018, number 4500.127. Councillor Kipp.
I'd like to ask a question before. Where are we sitting currently with this bylaw as it sits on the paper here for the I-2 and the I-4 zoning and this production and processing thing that we had talked about? Does anybody have?
So my understanding is, at the moment, large-scale productions only and processing is only permitted in I-4. Small-scale processing and growing is allowed in I-2. What the federal government refers to as craft cannabis.
Yeah, the craft, the 200 square meter thing.
Yep.
How would someone make a change to that now? If you wanted to open it up so I-2 and I-4 were equal? Because of the size of the properties now, you can only do so much unless they amalgamate. Like I know the cannabis place out in Tilray, they expanded and looking at buying more lots and expanding. So what would it take now to include I-2 and I-4 in processing and production?
Well, from our perspective, that would have to go back to a public hearing. So you've already had public hearing, third reading. So you can make a motion, and we would bring a staff report to the next public hearing. And
if that doesn't go, then people would have to make an application for each. If somebody wanted to go to I-2, they would have to make an individual site-specific application to go to I-2. They would be allowed to ask for that.
Correct. They'd have to do a site-specific rezoning on that.
That could take a matter of a year?
I think it depends how well organized they are. 3 months to 8 months. Yeah.
That's 8 months. I'm concerned about this, one, because we want to promote craft and the processing and the production of it. Typically, when you chair a committee, you don't always agree with it. That's one of the concerns I have as a councillor chairing a committee when reports come through. So my concern right now is that...
Councillor, all due respect, there's no debate at adoption. However, if you wish to modify or amend the bylaw as proposed, by all means, you can put a motion forward to repeal it.
And then we go back to public hearing.
So you repeal second and third reading. And you go back to second reading, and you'd have to have another public hearing.
Okay, I'm willing to do that. I'm willing to do that, to send this back.
Your worship, just quickly before council does make that motion, it would be really beneficial for staff to know what exactly changes you would like to make, and then before it goes back to public hearing. I believe that in looking at the possibilities of council possibly not passing this tonight, it would be really helpful if staff knew what changes council would be proposing. If it was just the zoning, the I-4, the I-2 that Councillor Kipp was speaking of, just some specifics would be helpful.
Okay, well, I know I've talked to Mr. Lindsay about this, and we have been, a lot of people have been getting back to us and talking to us about it. I've had concerns from a number of different agencies and current suppliers. So from my perspective, it would be to somehow not have a division between I-4 and I-2 regarding production and processing of marijuana. And that would be the difference. It's just not limited to I-4 and I believe it's a federal term or the language that we're concerned with, because production is production, processing is processing. Science is science, and to be able to do that in these locations, and I think it's only fair when you look at liquor distribution, we have liquor stores or liquor supply places going into I-2 zoning, we have breweries, distributors, those type of things, tasting stations going into I-2, and I'd hate to limit it or reduce it by a limitation to one type of zoning. Further to that, because Nanaimo on the leading edge of this, I would suggest we're probably one of the top cannabis producing areas in the world now. To limit it, and especially when I look at the craft or the small growers and the big growers in an amalgamation of services for products, for edibles will be coming down the road and those type of things.
So Councillor, I don't want to interrupt you. The clerk has asked you for changes.
That's why
Before
she understood that?
before we go into, so if you've got some text changes that you want made, then please advise staff so that we can, so that council has a better idea when we repeal third, second and third, that we know why we're repealing it.
I think I just explained that. Maybe you were predisposed worrying about what I was saying about, it's a difference, it's getting rid of the one zoning and having it open in I-2 and I-4 for production and processing.
So can you point that out to council in the agenda?
87.
Got the bylaw.
What's that?
Page 87.
Page 87? Thank you, Jerry. Somebody else want to take this over? I'm getting a little tired of this.
Your
Can you,
worship,
can you take us to page
Attitude.
87, please?
In the green sheet.
Disrespectful.
Thank you.
Your worship, just some thoughts. So I believe that staff have a good idea that it is the I-4 and I-2, and Mr. Corson or Mr. Rudolph, maybe he could help too as well. But there is the site-specific that you could request site-specific rezoning, but that does take a while. And the other issue, I don't know if Mr. Corson or Mr. Rudolph want to speak to it. I think Mr. Corson might, of what this will delay. Just in case, but then what I would suggest, just so council has that information, and then I would suggest repealing third reading and second reading, making a motion for the amendments you would like, and then those amendments would go back to public hearing. So that is the process that we're looking for. So you could repeal third, repeal second, make a motion to do those, and then make a motion with your amendments. And then those amendments could be incorporated into the bylaw and go back to public hearing. But Mr. Corson, did you want to speak to the delays or what this means, going back to public hearing? If you could just let council know that.
Yes, I think we just want you to be aware that by going back to public hearing, it will, probably, I'm going to assume it's a December public hearing, yeah. So it probably wouldn't be adopted until January next year. We were going to start meeting with retail cannabis applicants in the coming weeks, assuming this had been approved tonight. We'll probably defer those conversations now until this bylaw is adopted. So it's just one of the consequences. We won't be able to move forward as quickly as we wanted to with on the retail side of things. But certainly your discretion, do as you wish.
Thank you. Councillor Hong.
Thank you. I approved, voted in favor of moving this forward, but having a look at this and seeing the articles that were coming out, I think we are on the cutting edge. I think we should repeal this, and I think we should open up the market. If staff understand it, is I think number 5 by amending section 13.21 by adding cannabis production and processing is permitted within the industrial I-4 or an I-2 zone is the amendment that I would like to see. Even the definition of production and processing, if they're and or defined. But I think that is the fundamental change, is to allowing it, having it open in those areas. Like as we've seen from what Tilray is doing, whether it's production or processing in I-2, I-4, the smells are governed. So I think we should do this right, like the 7,000 and send it back to make sure we get this right, and the next council can have a look at this, because I think that little bit of delay will get this one right. And I think that's important for us to do. Thank you.
Ms. Curry.
Thank you, Worship. So I suggest somebody on council make a motion to rescind the third reading of zoning amendment bylaw 2018 number 4500.127 to regulate the sale, production, processing, and distribution of cannabis within the city of Nanaimo.
And then subsequent to that, we would ask for a separate motion to rescind second reading. Great, thank you. Is there someone prepared to make that motion? Councillor Bestwick.
Second.
Seconded by Councillor Kipp. Now, I do have a speaking list on the main motion, but on the, can you give me, on the motion that's on the floor to rescind, who wishes to speak to that? Councillor Armstrong?
My concern on that is now our retail stores cannot open. If they do open, they'll be in breach of provincial law and will be subject to enforcement. So how are we going to deal with that? So it sets them back by a good 3 months where they're not competitive, they won't have a license. If they do, my understanding, and I'm open to interpretation on this, if they do continue to stay open and sell, that they're in definite breach of the British Columbia Cannabis Control and Licensing Act. So now we've put businesses in the way of criminal prosecution if they continue to act. So I would like clarification on that if possible. That's how I read it, and I could be wrong.
Thank you. Councillor Brennan.
Thank you, Your Worship. What I'm wondering is if we were to send this back and then have a public hearing and then have it come forward, I'm just wondering if the time it would take to do that would be similar or more than it would take for an applicant to apply for a variance. You know? Once we have a framework in place, then things can start to proceed. And if you were to stop this now, send it back, rewrite it, take it to public hearing, you're looking at apparently out towards January, say. If we pass this tonight, then the sort of unhappy micro cannabis production processing individual might be able to make an application for a variance and get that passed before the time would have run out for a new bylaw. So if that's the case, if it's 6 of one, half a dozen of the other, I would prefer to just go ahead past this and invite the applicant to apply for a variance.
Thank you. Any further on the motion to repeal? Any further on the motion to repeal?
Great question.
Okay, so I'm not using this right now because there's a number of speakers already in the queue. So, on the motion to repeal, Councillor Kipp.
Thank you. I'd like to ask a question to staff. If we continue with the bylaw now, and then immediately started an amendment to the bylaw to include this, that might be the simpler process. So we can move this forward now, and then immediately make a motion after to an amendment to the bylaw to come forward to a first, second, and third reading. I believe that might be efficient, where we could still get to the same timeline. We could be writing this amendment. I mean, we pass something and then amend it immediately, which is, I guess, transparent and open government and moving things as a growing document. So is that possible? And how quickly, if we pass this and then make an immediate attempt for amendment, that would go to the next public hearing? So it would be the same time frame, but we would allow the commercial and stuff that is currently legal to move forward, or as the councillor said, the storefronts, and that can start to apply for licensing. But we make an immediate amendment proposition and write it properly and bring it to public hearing in December. And that might be more efficient. So I don't want to delay this. I think my first time was 2009 about talking on getting on with this green economy. So with that, by rescinding now, third and then second, we delay the whole process.
Exactly.
But by passing now and then making an immediate motion to adjust the bylaw, we can stay on a same time frame and still probably meet the deadline for the I-2, I-4.
Yes, Your Worship, through you to Councillor Kipp, I was actually trying to think the same thing through, and I think that might be a good idea, that you, rather than...
No, don't agree with me there. Don't say it's a good idea if you... No.
Rather than rescinding the motion, if council failed this motion or withdrew it, and then directed staff, after adopting the bylaw, to go back and make the amendments, bring back an amended bylaw with the issues that this council is having with this current bylaw, it's always a chance in the future to amend this bylaw. Like, this bylaw is just a base, and then it's going to require amendments throughout time as we get a better
next
picture.
year's gonna be crazy.
Exactly. So we were already finding out there's possibly amendments that council would like. But yeah, I would definitely suggest going that route rather than rescinding and starting back over and not having the base in place.
Okay. Yeah, okay, that was my question, so more people can talk.
Thank you. Councillor Bestwick.
Thank you very much. My position hasn't changed since we talked about this last time, but this is, to me, this is absolutely absurd that we're going to create a bylaw, and then the second that we create it, amend it. And that'll take 6 to 12 months, or however long that's going to take. For the life of me, I don't know how production and processing in I-1 and I-2, or sorry, I-2 and I-4 is going to impact significantly sales or retail sales. We can continue our discussions with cannabis retail outlets because the only time that we'll get in that game is when they've made application to the province and the province has checked the boxes and signed off and sent them back and said, we approve of these outlets in the city of Nanaimo. Now, over to you guys. So this is about I-2 and I-4, processing, production, and it says sales. I don't think that there's been any, to my knowledge, applications to the provincial government for cannabis retail stores in I-2 or I-4 zoning. Maybe there has been. Maybe somebody obviously knows something. But anybody else that's not in I-2 or I-4 zoning can continue to keep the process alive. So what I'm hearing is if we don't approve the zoning for production, process, and sales in I-4 only, that everybody else can't proceed? Well, then that's even more absurd. That's even absolutely, then we should be removing sales out of I-2 and I-4 then for the moment. And then add it in later. If somebody in I-2 or I-4 that's doing production and processing would also like to sell over the counter. We're being asked to develop a new bylaw, and then we're recommending that we change that bylaw or ask somebody that's out there to submit for an amendment. And basically what we're saying then is, we're going to do this, but just submit a rezoning application and we'll approve it right away. That's basically what we're saying. We're going to tell people just to come over and just ask us to amend the bylaw. And we'll probably change it for you. So why the hell don't we just do that now? Say I-2 and I-4 is okay. And have a special public hearing in November. 1 month from now. And as soon as the public hearing's over, vote in favor of it that night, like we have special council meetings. You can get it done in the next 30 days. We do it all the time. It's a brand new bylaw, and we want to amend it before we've even written it yet. The ink's not dry. Absurd to me.
Okay, on the motion to
I'm removing my second on that motion to rescind third. Sorry. I'm removing my second from it. Councillor Bestwick motioned it. I want to remove my second from it. I can't support that.
What motion are we talking about?
Rescind three.
To rescind.
So I'm removing my motion. Somebody else has to second it. So I don't want to move a motion and vote against it.
Thank you, Councillor Bestwick.
I'm going to ask for what the motion is that we're going to be voting on, but to my mind, that we refer bylaw 2018-4500.127 back to staff and conduct another public hearing at the earliest possible time to permit production and processing and sales in I-2 and I-4 zones. I beg your pardon? I mean, that's what I just said without formality of putting it in the frame of a motion in my previous talk. But it just, again, I'm trying to remove the absurdity from all of this to create a bylaw and then amend the bylaw immediately following creating it. And taking 6 months maybe to do it. And asking the people out there, they have to submit to us, not just us doing it. So now we're putting a business or businesses through undue work and money to come and ask for a bylaw amendment. We don't do those in a matter of days. We never have. They're months. So it doesn't make sense to me. If we really want people to be able to get into business, what we're doing is saying if you're an I-2, you can't do production, processing, and sales on a scale that you could do at an I-4. And there is no I-4 property in Nanaimo in which to do it on. So what we're actually doing too is driving the price of that property up in I-4 zones as soon as they find out that we don't have any. Supply and demand. It does not make sense. I-2 and I-4 should be permitted to do the same thing: produce, process, sale.
Ms. Gurry.
Thank you, Worship. So the motion that Councillor Bestwick made was actually to rescind a third reading of the bylaw. What I suggested is that that you withdraw that motion, and Councillor Kipp has withdrawn his seconder, so we would now need another seconder for that motion to proceed. What Councillor Kipp was suggesting, and I tend to agree, and even though it is a brand-new bylaw that Council is already speaking of amending, this is an unusual bylaw and an unusual territory for local governments to be dealing with cannabis and sales in this manner. So I believe Council pretty much suspected going in that there was going to be lots of adjustments that would need to be made throughout the process. So what staff, myself, is suggesting is to go with Councillor Kipp's suggestion and to withdraw the rescinding of the third reading and adopt this bylaw, and staff can move forward with working on an amendment to bring to council. And the public hearing process won't work for November because the public hearing is the first Thursday of the month, and the inaugural meeting for the new council is November the 5th. And the new council won't be able to have heard. They could see the minutes, etc., but we only would do third reading after the public hearing had concluded in November. The adoption would then go to the next council, and that makes it a little confusing. That's why we're looking to not have a public hearing on the first Thursday of November, because of the council switchover.
Thank you. So I'm a little bit challenged here because we don't have anything to debate at this moment, because it's been support has been lifted by Councillor Kipp. Is there someone else that's prepared, because the mover has not suggested he will take it off the table? Is there someone else prepared to second this motion?
I just have a question.
Are you prepared to second the motion?
Well, if I have to second the motion to ask my question, then God, you've got to love the bureaucracy. I will second the motion. Now, can I speak to it?
You can speak to it. It's
Simple
now,
question.
It's now back on the floor.
Thank you. You've got to love bureaucracy, because this is what we're talking about.
It's called Robert's Rules, sir.
No, this is all part of bureaucracy, so let's just leave that out. Okay, simple question, Ms. Gurry. Which is quicker, adopting and then making a motion immediately tonight to amend it, or rescinding and then coming back to public hearing? Which is quicker? Simple. Which one?
Thank you, Worship. Through you to Councillor Fuller, I'd like to give you a simple answer, but this is my answer. My answer is that it is quicker for those applications and businesses that already want to get started. It's quicker.
Not asking about that.
It's quicker
asking
to-
about the I-2 thing, simply. Not debating the businesses. Those can be grandfathered just like we want to grandfather. Whatever, I don't care. It is sheer stupidity. And I said this last time, to have two different things going on, I-2, I-4.
Councillor, Your Worship, through you, maybe maybe Mr. Corson could answer that question better than I could then.
I think it's relatively the same length of time, so it's either way will be in a similar time frame. So both could be used, could be targeting the same public hearing in December. That would be the goal. But I don't know if there's...
Thank you. Councillor Brennan, do you wish to speak to the motions on the floor to rescind?
Yes.
Okay.
I'm speaking against the motion to rescind. I prefer us to pass the full bylaw and then move to make the necessary amendment and then have that go forward. I think in terms of whether the time is, as I'm going to call him Mr. Jake, but that's not right, so. As has been suggested to us by the CAO, it's 6 of one, half dozen the other in terms of time. So I'd rather pass the bylaw, have the framework there for everybody else who's engaged in this industry, and then start immediately on the amendment. And it seems to me that if there is an amendment coming down the pike, that it would be unusual for our bylaw enforcement to go to a microprocessor and try to close it down, knowing that there is an amendment in the processor. I remember when we did that with secondary suites, when there was a motion to review that, we stopped immediately shutting down secondary suites until the issue was resolved. Seems
Thank you.
similar.
Councillor Thorpe.
Thank you, Chair. Speaking to the motion, I can't support rescinding and starting this process over again. I would be more in favor of passing the bylaw tonight, and then if there are amendments forthcoming, we can deal with those. And I by no means will automatically necessarily be supporting any such bylaws or changes, so that's a separate conversation. I would like to see this move forward so that we get a bylaw in place. We can deal with amendments if we need to, or in fact, we could go the route of site-specific rezoning, and I'm not opposed to that either at this point. But either way, I think we should pass this bylaw tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Yocum.
Thank you. Just a quick question I would have is, if this is legal, like in 2 weeks or something, or 3 weeks, the subject, so the people that sit here and set up retail, this could stall it a bit, or quite a bit?
Yocum, yeah, so basically until this bylaw is adopted, you can't have a retail operation in our retail areas in Nanaimo.
And then the interest to what I'm hearing from Councillor Kip's subject, that conversation that include is it IR4, IR2, or IT2? What's the term?
I2?
I2, I mean, sorry, yeah. Would be had after, and there's that space to have that conversation.
Yes, correct. You could give us direction to include that for, yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Fuller.
Well, I'm going to support the motion, even though I know it'll get defeated, and then once it is, and the motion passes to adopt the bylaw, if no one else is going to do it, I will make a notice of motion at the end of this evening to come forward at the next council meeting with a motion to amend the bylaw to deal with the I2, I4.
Okay, Councillor Hong.
Thank you. I like Councillor Kip's idea, because I think, that was one of the challenges I looked at and reason why I wanted to send it back. But if we can do it as an amendment right away, then we can do that, and we're not going to stop the retail side moving forward. So I'll support Councillor Kip's idea, and I won't support the repeal of this motion as it goes forward, and we'll make a new motion after that to add I2 to industrial zoning for cannabis production and processing. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Fuller.
Well, that was my question earlier. Can we do that immediately after adopting the bylaw? Okay, thank you. Then I'll vote against the motion I said.
Okay, thank you. So I can't support the motion to repeal either, and my reason for that is because there's been a tremendous amount of interference by people beyond the time of the public hearing. We received a lot of correspondence, and any changes to modifications to the bylaw would be subject to appeal. So we need to proceed and then find a tool to make changes afterwards. So I can't support the motion to repeal. All right, I'm going to call the question on the motion to repeal third reading. All those in favor? Councillor Bestwick. All those opposed? Show Councillor Hong, Councillor Brennan, Mayor McKay, Councillor Kipp, Councillor Fuller, Councillor Thorpe, and Councillor Armstrong. Opposed, motion is defeated. All right.
Motion of zoning amendment bylaw 2018 number 4500-127 to regulate the sale, production, processing, and distribution of cannabis within the city of Nanaimo be adopted.
Thank you. It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor? Opposed? Show Councillor Bestwick is opposed. Motion carries.
Make a motion now to send this to public hearing for a change, a review of the I-2, I-4, and the process, production, and of cannabis. So that's is it a motion now, or is it require a motion now or a notice of motion? It can be a motion if it's accepted.
Yeah, yes,
Make a motion.
Your worship, through you to Councillor Kipp, you can make a motion now. I would suggest it won't go directly to public hearing, it will come here and then
Go
go.
to first and second reading here, and then go to third reading for
Exactly,
public hearing.
exactly.
So I'll
Thank
make that motion now. Do I have a seconder?
So that's a motion, not a notice of motion.
No, no, it is a
It's a
motion.
motion. Thank you. Moved, seconded by Councillor Hong. Any discussion? Councillor Fuller.
So is this, can you please read the motion?
Well, I'm winging it right now. But that council directs staff to amend the zoning amendment bylaw 2018, number 4500.127, to include I-2 and I-4
In a similar vein of.
in the similar,
production
yes.
process.
So the professionals will help me with that wording, and report back and bring it back to council for 2 readings, and then proceed to public hearing.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Seeing none, call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Next item, property tax exemption bylaw.
Motion of property tax exemption bylaw 2018, number 7271, to provide exemptions from 2019 property taxes be adopted.
Thank you. It's been moved and seconded. Call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. So, under the mayor's report, did you want to bring those slides up?
So, your worship, the first slide up there is the motion that council passed and was moved and seconded and passed to rise and report on.
So, thank you. So, we've been working with our staff on, with respect to potential future expenditures based on the dismantling of Discontent City. They have come up with a number of different items. I'm sure that we can, here we go, in more detail. The potential future costs for downtown supports include needle pickup, additional support for Sharps pickup and parks. 1 FTE will be required for this support, which is scheduled to expire on October 31st. So this, just so everybody knows, is till the end of the year. Extend existing service and add 1 additional FTE until the end of 2018. The cost $30,000. Second one is garbage pickup and collection, additional garbage collection provided by contract service, which is at an estimated cost of $10,800. Downtown security, one additional downtown security, possibly 2 on each shift until the end of 2018, cost $50,000. downtown cleaning, additional cleaning, increased staff complement for downtown cleaning of 2 FTEs for remainder of 2018 to allow for daily can pickup and regular sweeping costs $50,000. So that comes to a total of $190,800. Then future costs for park supports outside of downtown. That would, we expect that we'll be seeing a significant increase in camping, overnight shelter, so additional level of service on parks custodians, that would be $90,000, additional auxiliary workers for the downtown parks and utility crew. That's 3 FTEs for the month of December, cost $21,000, another 100 for a subtotal of $111,000. So the two of them, if we go back to the original slide. One more. Would be $301,800, and it's to be funded from the 2018 surplus. So in addition to that, I wanted to mention that yesterday I attended the British Columbia Law Enforcement Memorial, and the memorial coincides with the National Police and Peace Officers Memorial held in Ottawa and rotates annually between the Bastion on the grounds of the BC Legislature in Victoria and an alternate location in the Lower Mainland. The Bastion, a provincial monument to those officers who lost their lives in active service to the citizens of British Columbia, was unveiled on September 26, 2004 by Premier Gordon Campbell, Solicitor General Rich Coleman, and Dr. Chris and Teresa Ang, parents of the fallen RCMP Constable Jimmy Ang, who represented the fallen hero family at the annual memorial event. The honor of organizing the annual event is tasked to an organization committee with representations from the partner agencies, including the Abbotsford, the CN, the CP Police, Delta Police, Metro Vancouver, Military Police, Nelson Police, New Westminster Police, Oak Bay, Port Moody, Royal Canadian Mounted Police, Saanich Police, Vancouver Police, Victoria Police, West Vancouver Police, and the Canadian Border Services Agency, and Commercial Vehicle and Safety Enforcement Officers. It was a very moving ceremony, I must say. So, next item is other business, and that is request under the council and council spending amnesty policies. I inadvertently did not request from council a repayment of the expenses in order to attend that event on behalf of City of Nanaimo, so I'm hereby requesting the approval or reimbursement of travel expenses totaling $153.55 to attend this memorial service. Moved by Councillor Kipp, seconded by Councillor Hong. Any discussion? Seeing none, call a question. All those in favor, opposed, motion carries. Thank you very much. And that leaves us with question period. Do we have? We have a question. Thank you. Mr. Boland, under 8B.
Recall a bit my discussion at the last meeting about the procedure bylaw, and I was you will recall I received a response that the public was invited to offer their suggestions at the August 22nd community engagement process, and after that was really not welcome. Imagine my surprise when I opened Thursday's copy of the bulletin and find an ad that talks about notice of intention to repeal and replace council procedure bylaw, and so on. And it is offered here that written submissions may be delivered to the address below or sent via email too. So public submissions have been requested. since that time. I would like to know whether this was the only publication of this particular ad in the paper to the public, as it is a requirement of the community charter. Was it previously announced, or was it only done on this Thursday?
Ms. Gray.
Thank you, Worship. No, it has to run in at least 2 consecutive weeks. So it did run in 2 consecutive weeks. I don't have the dates off the top of my head, but I can let Mr. Boland know what those are. This was subsequent, the submissions we do receive and keep and look into, and I already have received several from the public engagement and before, so.
Thank you.
Okay, I'm sorry, but this really is a dead zone here, for at least for me to hear. So was it published before this?
Yes, it was.
It was?
Yes.
Okay, is there any time scale given after the final publication during which the public can respond?
The clerk will be looking that up, sir. Ms. Green.
Thank you, Worship. So the publication calls for submissions, but the actual community charter under Section 124 states that notice must be provided pursuant to Section 94 of the community charter. Section 94 of the community charter doesn't state that we have to receive submission. It states that we have to run it in 2 consecutive weeks in a local newspaper. So the submission was probably in the ad the last time, and rather than calling for submissions, what we did this time was public engagement and all of the other interviews, et cetera, over the past year plus that we've done with this procedure bylaw. So the ad was probably just done in the same manner that it was done the last time the procedure bylaw was renewed, but it's not a requirement under the charter to receive submissions.
Thank you. Did you get that, sir?
I'll leave it at that.
Perhaps you can speak to the clerk at the end of the meeting.
And what was the date of the first publication of this ad? I certainly missed it.
I doubt we have that on hand at the moment.
Okay. I believe I'm complete, so.
Thank you very much. Is there a motion to adjourn? Motion to adjourn. Thank you. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries.